The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, October 8th. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week so far. Crazy times. Yeah, for those of you living in Florida, I hope you're staying safe. It does look like Hurricane Milton is heading directly to you, particularly those of you in the Tampa area. I'd say anyway from Naples to the Panhandle. It's going to be intense. Particularly, it looks like a direct hit on Tampa, and hard to tell if the hurricane is intensify. Is going to stay at the intensity it is. It's slowed down a little bit. Yeah, last night it was 186 miles an hour, I think it was recorded at, and pressure in the eye would drop below 900. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but it sounded really, really bad. So there's going to be, a significant wind associated with this hurricane going into the Tampa area. Hopefully it slows down. Hopefully it doesn't hit a Category 5. And this is not just any Category 5. This is a big Category 5. This is a Category 5 at the top of the spectrum. There is such a thing, I guess, as a Category 6. So hopefully it goes down to Category 3 or 2 or 1, and 0 would be ideal. But realistically, hopefully it goes down to Category 3. I think Tampa can handle that. Category 5, that is something. I saw the damage that the Category 4, 5 Maria did to Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico's not as well constructed as Tampa is, but still, it's going to be bad. So hopefully you guys stay safe. If you can evacuate, do so. It's just safer. It's just better. You don't know how long power will be out. You don't know a lot of things, so it's just better just not to be there. Take a break. Go somewhere if you still can. It's getting more and more difficult with traffic and everything else to evacuate. Anyway, for those of you under the delusion that Hurricane Milton is just a natural phenomenon, MAGA is here to set you straight. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, tweeted just a couple of days ago. I mean, very cryptic tweet and deep and thoughtful. So hard to, you can interpret it any way you want. But Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. So with the hurricane going through Georgia and North Carolina and now hitting Florida, conspiracy theories are through the roof. MAGA excels at this. The wacky, crazy, nutty people are out in droves. Unfortunately, these are also people that are very active in Republican politics, starting with Congresswoman, can you believe it? Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, they can control the weather. I mean, there's a question about who she means by they. Does she mean the government? Does she mean Democrats? Does she mean the Jews with the space lasers? It's not clear who she means exactly. But they, they are scary people, or not people, as the case may be. They can control the weather. And all of you out there, including me, we should stop lying. We should stop lying about it. So cloud seeding and controlling the weather, same thing. But this is broader than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, this is just entered into the mill of crazy conspiracy theories adopted by MAGA. I mean, you've got crazy left And the alternative, many people tell me is the only alternative, is MAGA. This is from somebody else in MAGA, right? The weather canon is being manipulated. Wake up. Stop being ignorant or plain stupid. There's no such thing as coincidences. The most important election in history of America is 30 days away. Pray. Yeah, pray. Georgia voting has been compromised. And don't know if we will be able to get all our early voting days in. Now, a hurricane is coming straight for Florida. These two states are necessary for a Trump victory. It's no coincidence. God hides lions inside of sheep. I know you're in there somewhere. Make the terrified to cheat. This is our nation to lose or ours to keep. And of course, she links to the real Donald Trump. You got to save the country, and the weather is. One other thing I've noticed that maybe supports the conspiracy theories is the weather seems to be, these hurricanes seem to be knocking out only the homes of Republicans. It like is only on counties that are dominantly Republicans, like the Democratic strongholds, it's skipping over them somehow. You notice that? God doesn't control the weather anymore. No, it's Democrats. It's Jewish Democrats. Grant, this is Grant, another tweet. And he's got like a gold check mark on Twitter. I grew up on the Gulf of Mexico, been watching storms since I was a young boy. I have never, all capitalized, seen a storm start here and go east. Do you think government is using technology to manipulate weather patterns and storms? They're moving it away from Texas, because like Texas is already Republican, and they're moving it towards the counties in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina that are Republican. And then my favorite is this one. Sorry to burden you with all this, but I figured we'd start off with some humor because, God. Anyway, Brian says, Coffee Talk 101. Hurricanes are part of nature. Surface water temperature, shear wind, and barometric pressure play a huge factor in their development. A huge factor in their development. But it's factually true that our government has the ability to enhance weather pattern systems by cloud seeding, or otherwise known as weather modification. Look it up. This method is deployed around the world to help in drought-stricken areas. Here's to all my meteorological friends that are on Facebook. How many meteorologists does he know? Do you think our government is enhancing the intensity of these storms? Just asking a question. What exactly do these hurricane hunters do? They would be the only ones that are logistically close to the storms. Once again, just asking questions. And yes, I've added raw milk to my coffee. Oh my God. Just asking questions. Just asking. I mean, could it be Jewish seeders of storms, storm hunters, the guys who drive around in planes? They all have Jewish names for some reason. I'm just asking questions. I don't know. You know, could Hitler be a better person than we all expected him? We all be taught that he was. I'm just asking questions. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Well, maybe Lincoln was the really bad guy in American history, and Churchill was the really bad guy in World War II. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Yeah, I mean, this is, people are mimicking now Tucker's methodologies. Just asking questions. As if asking questions is value neutral. As if asking questions when they're really, it's not leading, it doesn't have implications, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't present an opinion. When, indeed, The question being asked, completely nutty, completely crazy, completely, nuts. Anyway, this is MAGA. Every time, I'm tempted to say, oh, well, you should, Kamala is so bad, you should really vote for Donald Trump. I get a bunch of these tweets or Facebook posts or whatever, and I go, these are the crazies who are in many ways going to be in charge of the country. This is the audience that needs to be appeased. These are the people who are going to bring out the votes. Many of these people sit on election, election committees, election whatever. In many of the swing states. These are the people who decide the election because they'll decide how to frame Donald Trump's victory. One wonders if people have been this crazy always. And I think the answer to that is probably, yeah, somewhat. I think two things. I think, one, the world has become crazy, and we'll get to why in a minute. But second, I think the crazies in the past were marginalized. They didn't really belong to either political party. Maybe they voted Republican. Maybe during previous eras they even voted Democrat. Who knows? They voted in a variety of different ways. But they were always at the margin. They were always ridiculed. They were always trivialized. And their voices were small, insignificant. Nobody paid too much attention to them. The difference is that the insane run the asylum now. These are the people who are at the forefront of a political movement. These are the people who are being elevated to positions of influence and of power within that political movement. They're no longer an irrelevant fringe. They're at the heart, they're at the center of the Trump political machine. These are the people that have to be satisfied, appeased, coddled. And what's Trump has discovered, and Vance has discovered, is if they tell these people, if they suggest some crazy idea to these people, some kind of lie to these people, they'll just reinforce it, they'll repeat it, they'll make up stories to justify it, they'll create memes, they'll create videos, they'll create all kinds of stuff to support it. The cat-eating migrants is a good example of that. But basically, the Republican Party right now is run by and run for complete basket cases. People who are certifiable. There's a sense in which, these are not modern Christians. These are like Dark Ages, superstitious, mystical morons who have no idea, no clue. Wait until they meet AI. Wait until they actually go online and start chatting with an AI. Wait until somebody creates a MAGA AI. There's a scary thought for you. Bree said her cat ate a migrant. Some people would think that's terrific. Maybe we can breed your cat so they can eat more migrants, so we'll have fewer migrants. Isn't that the goal? I don't know. These people are crazy. Just to some extent, certifiable. And, somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you could say, well, she's doing this on purpose. No, she's crazy. This is not her innocently not understanding. She's nuts. And the left has evil people, evaders, AOC and the squad. The right has just complete, nutcases. What a choice. You got nuts and the immoral, the evading, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. This is, and I'm seeing, if you go online, you can find this stuff on the weather all over the place. And the sad thing is, and then there's the whole conspiracy theories about FEMA, and FEMA's diverting money, and that turns out to be a lie. But then Elon Musk and people like that have discovered, shockingly, for the first time maybe in their lives, shockingly, they've discovered that FEMA's not efficient. FEMA is the federal agency that provides emergency aid at times of these kind of catastrophes like hurricanes and earthquakes and floods. And what people are discovering to their horror and interpreting as a conspiracy theory, interpreting as this is unique to the Biden administration, is that FEMA doesn't do a good job. They're not efficient. They're not efficient. They're not effective. You remember, what was the big hurricane that struck New Orleans? I've got Maria comes to mind, but it's not Maria because that was the one that hit Puerto Rico. Anyway, whatever the hurricane that hit New Orleans 20 years ago. George Bush was president in those days. And FEMA was, I mean, I'd say it, Katrina, thank you, super quick. It was Katrina. And FEMA was unbelievably ineffective. It was a joke. I mean, a joke is a bad way to, because it was so, people died because of them, because they were so ineffective. Now, I've argued, will continue to argue, will always argue, there should be no FEMA. But, and I argued in the days of Katrina, there should be no FEMA. But given that we have a FEMA, they were terrible. People died. And, you know, Walmart, Home Depot were so much better and more effective in getting aid and getting supplies and getting stores open and getting provisions to people than was FEMA. And we all knew that, and nobody said, yeah, well, this is what Republicans do. They want to screw blacks in Louisiana, so they're doing it. Although probably some people actually did say that. Anyway, now it's Biden. It's, you know, it's obvious the Biden administration. It's a Democratic plot, and they're seeding, they're creating the bad weather, then they're not saving people, then they're letting people die, and they're being inefficient about it. It makes me, it's just mind-boggling to me that smart people, when smart people suddenly discover or pretend to discover that government is ineffective for political reasons. My respect for Elon Musk is, again, it goes up and down. It's on a massive falling off a cliff phase. And I will do a show. We'll see how quickly I recover from surgery tomorrow. But I will do a show going over parts of Elon Musk's interview with our favorite interviewer. What can we say? Tucker Carlson. He did an interview with Tucker Carlson. At least we'll cover the section about Elon Musk claiming he is a cultural Christian. Cultural Christian. That seems to become the term of the hour. The term of the hour. But yeah, we'll go over the Elon Musk interview with Tucker Carlson. God, what a mixture Elon Musk represents. What a sad mixture. The extent to which Elon Musk needs philosophy is just depressing. All right, let's see. Somebody says the atheist mystic. He doesn't even come across as an atheist. He leaves a big open opportunity for the existence of God. All right. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the country goes from here, but and the reality is, and this is, let me just see, where am I? The reality here is that I continue to think that at the end of the day, Trump is going to win this election. I think there are two things right now that are going to basically lead to a Trump victory. I think one is the hurricanes. I think what the hurricanes do is, just like they did to Bush in the 2000s with Katrina, they show the incompetence of government. And therefore, that incompetence is primarily blamed on the people in power, because they're the ones running the government right now. So they're the ones getting blamed for the incompetence, for the bad outcomes. So Biden and the administration, justifiably or not, would be blamed for all the bad outcomes from the current hurricanes, the two hurricanes, the big ones, the one in North Carolina and Milton on the way right now. And that could swing just enough votes towards Trump. I think that's the first. The second is, and by the way, before I get to the second, polls seem to be showing this. So, Silva, what's his name? Silva's models, they keep going up and down, but betting markets, the poll numbers are very much flat. Right now, it's a 50-50 race, but betting markets shifted from Kamala Harris to Trump over the last few days. So there's a slightly higher chance now that Trump wins. But if you just look at it statistically, there's every reason to believe that Trump is going to win. And I think because of the hurricane, one, and I think because of what's going on in the Middle East, I think Trump has to be deemed right now a small favorite in the run for the White House. Give me 1 second. Just have to text this out. Gone. All right. So think about what's going on in the Middle East right now. Nobody within the kind of constituencies of the Democratic Party is happy, right? You've got escalating violence, escalation. There it is again, that word, escalation. Which of course Biden hates, because what does the escalating violence in the Middle East do? It galvanizes anti-Israeli Arab Americans and crazy leftists whose votes I think Democrats mostly just take for granted and assume they're theirs. And in this time, these people could stay home over this issue. You could even imagine some of them voting for Trump with the idea that Trump it's more uncertain about his alliance with Israel than, Biden sending weapons and supporting Israel in one way or the other, even though we who really support Israel understand how much Biden is crippling Israel. It's not the perception from the Arab side. So you've got Arab Americans who are anti-Israel. Not all Arab Americans are anti-Israel, but those who are. And the left, the progressive left, who is very anti-Israel, they are now less inclined, more reluctant about voting. A lot of young people who might be pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, who typically would go out and vote for the Democratic Party, might decide to stay home or vote for one of the third-party candidates who represents the wacky left. And then the flip side of that is you've got a lot of Jews who are really worried about the Democratic Party, the direction the Democratic Party is going in, the anti-Semitism on the rise within the Democratic Party, and are reluctant to go out and vote Democrat as well. And some of them might actually bite the bullet and vote for Trump because Trump was, in their mind, good for Israel the first time. There's a thing going on. I think Cliff Asness started this. What is it? He's a never Trumper, and he basically is saying, I was a never Trumper, but never again, referring to the Holocaust, never again, is right now trumping my never Trump. Never again more important to me than never Trump. So I'm going to hold my nose hate it and vote for Trump. He's not a Democrat, but there was a vote for the taking for the Democrats. Somebody who was going to vote for them, was going to vote against Trump, probably voted for Biden last time, Cliff did, and they lost him because they're not supportive of Israel enough. So you see this, that they can't appease either one of these. If they get tough on Israel, very tough, much tougher than they are, then they lose the support of wealthy Jews and they lose a lot of Jewish votes. If they support Israel and they go full on in support of Israel, they have the potential of losing the Arab votes. And you can see this in how Kamala tries to answer the questions. Oh, I support Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself. We will always have a special relationship with Israel. But they really need to stop escalating, and they really need to stop, and they really need to do what we tell them. Trying to have a cake, eat it as well, trying to have it both ways. In Michigan, the support for the Democratic Party has been eroded dramatically. The support for Kamala, she is hurting among significant Arab populations in communities around Detroit. These are communities that ultimately, I don't think a Democrat has won in Michigan without their vote. Or in a long time maybe. They need those votes, and yet a lot of those voters are going to stay home. They're just going to stay home. They're not going to vote for Kamala. It might be in other areas, but Michigan is obviously a swing state where it matters. But you've also got Jewish votes in Georgia. You've got a Jewish vote in Michigan, which is not insignificant in a small swing state where a few thousand votes might make all the difference. You've got a Jewish population in Michigan. You've got a Jewish population in Georgia. It's going to make a difference. And the Middle East is a real problem. I'd say there's another element to this, which goes beyond Arabs and Jews. And that is that to average Americans, this looks like a mess. It just looks like a mess. They don't really understand the intricacies of what's going on between Israel and the Palestinians and Hamas and Lebanon. But what do they see? They see a Biden administration telling Israel one thing and Israel doing, not always following what they say, and Biden being constantly upset and frustrated by the Israeli administration. Axios is now reporting that the Biden administration is increasingly frustrated by the Israelis, and they don't trust the Israelis, and Israel's number one ally of the United States. So they see Biden and his administration frustrated, impotent, incompetent. These Houthis stopping trade. Not a lot of people are talking about this, but America seems to be unable to do anything. American bases in Iraq and Syria are under attack. Nobody really understands why we have bases in Iraq and Syria. Average Americans don't understand that, but they're being under attack and nothing is being done. There's been a war going on in the Middle East for a year, and America has not been able to stop it. They keep talking about negotiating. In other words, the Biden administration seems unbelievably, and is, incompetent. Lost. Weak. That can't be good for Kamala. It can't be good for Kamala from an electoral perspective. Americans see that, they understand it, they don't like it. I mean, what is really shocking is how poorly Donald Trump is doing. I mean, again, any other Republican candidate would be crushing it right now. Kamala wouldn't have a chance. Not to mention Nikki Haley, who would be up 10 points, I think. Because she'd make a big deal out of the ineffectiveness of Biden in terms of the Middle East. She could do that. Trump can't. She she could attack him on the issues, which Trump cannot. And all of this, of course, the blowing up, bombs falling, terrorism and everything in the Middle East causes, when Trump says things that are just not true, like terrorists are flooding into the country from the southern border, that resonates with people because they're seeing terrorists elsewhere, blowing stuff up, and America not being able to do anything about it. So it doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, this election becomes not about Trump. I think if it was about Trump, he would lose. The election becomes about the Biden administration, and it's dealing with the current major issues, and the Middle East, and hurricane relief, FEMA. The economy's kind of subsided because the economy's doing pretty well. I know I keep saying that, and some of you guys really resisted and don't want to hear it. But job numbers last week were really good, and other stuff is coming in. The numbers are coming in pretty good, and it's much more expensive today to buy stuff than it was before Biden became president. But that's going away. So it's not rising as fast. So it's not that big of a concern. It does look like the election is tilting towards Trump. If I had a bet, if I had to put money on it, as people do in the money forecasting websites, I would put it on Trump, not on Kamala. And that's how the betting is going right now. It supports a Trump victory. What that means to the world, I don't know. And I think part of what we all have to prepare for, I don't know how you prepare for this, so we just have to be aware of, is kind of the mayhem that is going to be the outcome of the election. That is, this is going to be a close election. It's going to be challenged, and it's going to be craziness. It's going to be the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world out there suing one another, challenging this, challenging that. Every single vote is going to be, in the swing states, is going to be challenged, questioned. I wouldn't be surprised if election night both candidates declare they've won. It's going to be a zoo. Like 4 years ago, you remember, Fox News actually declared the election for Biden. It basically declared Arizona for Biden, and Trump flipped out when he heard that. And the guy who did that lost his job, even though he was right. Biden did win Arizona. Do you think Fox is going to dare declare the election to Biden if it's close? So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be really, really, really a difficult election. It's going to be a difficult few days. It's why, by the way, you guys should come to my Denver talk. On the link to it is right below here. You can go and sign up. If you're in Colorado, you can go and sign up. It's going to be a panel discussion with me and Tom, who's a really good intellectual, specializes in the founding, in the Declaration, in the nature of America, Constitution and Declaration. And we're going to be talking about the election, the outcome, what's happening. As all of this is going to be in dispute, and we're also going to talk about the future and is there any positive outcome? Is there any positive path? So come. It's the 7th, 2 days after the election in Denver, Colorado. It's not free, but you can sign up at the link below. Right there, Colorado event mentioned in episode. The link is there. Hopefully it works at Everbright. And yeah, it would be great for a bunch of you to show up and come, and it'll be a lot of fun. So please join us. Please join us. All right. Let me remind everybody, the show is supported, exists, continues daily almost, because of the support of listeners like you. Can't happen without you. And a major way in which you can help support the show and dictate kind of the content is through the Super Chat. And so jump into Super Chat. We're a little behind on the goal, I guess, for the first hour. So please jump in with some questions or just do a sticker. You can do a sticker if you don't want to ask a question, which is another way of just supporting the show pretty easily and pretty straightforwardly. All right. So everybody's kind of waiting. I certainly am waiting. Many people are waiting to see what Israel is going to do vis-a-vis Iran. You remember? It's been a long time already, but Iran fired close to 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. It changed tactic from what it did in April when it launched hundreds of drones and then cruise missiles and then ballistic missiles. And as a consequence, it kind of telegraphed its intentions with the drones, because the drones took hours to get to Israel, 5 hours, I think. It just launched ballistic missiles. The ballistic missiles take 12 to 18 minutes to reach Israel. They're much harder to shoot down because of their speed and how high above the atmosphere they fly. According to reports right now, 20 of those missiles, so of about 200 that were launched against Israel, 20 were knocked down before they even reached Israeli airspace, primarily by you call them allies, by the U.S., the Iranians, the Jordanians. So NATO and Jordan probably knocked down about 10% of the missiles on the way. Not easy, as I said, to knock out these missiles. About 180 of them made it into Israeli airspace. But about 30 to 40 of them, this is not reported extensively, certainly not reported by Israeli media. But the reality is that about 30 to 40 of them actually hit in Israel. They actually landed in Israel. Now, it turned out that several of them landed in a Air Force base, and it turned out that it did very little damage in that Air Force base. They hit warehouses and open runways and open fields and didn't do any real damage. A few others were targeted at the headquarters of the Mossad. The Mossad is located at an intersection, on the Tel Aviv-Haifa highway, just south of Herzliya. So between Tel Aviv and Herzliya, everybody knows where the Mossad headquarters are. It's a fairly populated area, so the ones that landed did land in generally populated areas. Again, they landed in open fields, so nobody was hurt. So indeed, nobody actually died. But it is important to note that as compared to the first attack in April, where 99% of the projectiles were knocked down out of the air, in this attack, only 80% of them were. And the question is why? We don't know. Israel has not disclosed why 20% got through. And that could be that their system identified that they were heading to open ground and they let them fall. It could be that it was a strategic decision to let a certain number through because Israel has a limited supply of Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 interceptors. These are the missiles that intercept ballistic missiles. There just aren't that many of them. They have a limited supply of them. They're struggling to produce more, but they can't import them. It's produced by Israel, so they have to produce them. They're struggling to produce enough. They're also, and this is important, unbelievably expensive to produce. That is, these are not cheap. They're really, really expensive. They're much more expensive than the ballistic missile. The ballistic missile is relatively speaking dumb. An arrow 2 to hit a missile above the atmosphere or below once it enters the atmosphere, traveling at the kind of speeds these missiles do. Some of them were Mach 5 times faster than the speed of sound. Wow, the technology there is stunning and amazing. And it could be that Israel, for cost reasons, decided to let some of the missiles go through. They might be worried about future attacks from Iran, so they're saving these missiles. And by the way, Hezbollah and the Houthis have launched ballistic missiles against Israel, so they need the Arrow 2s and Arrow 3s in order to defend themselves against multiple parties, including the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. So it could be economics, where they figure, look, repairing the damage on a runway or warehouse, it's a lot cheaper than building more Arrow interceptors. Hard to tell, but the reality is that the Iranian attack, we don't know how scary it really was. That is, unfortunately, the Israeli government has not been transparent with its own people. And indeed, almost all the reporting on the amount of damage in Israel, almost all the reporting on the number of missiles to make it through the defense system has been foreign reporting. The Israeli government is just pretending it never happened, which is tragic and really criminal in many respects and awful. I mean, and it doesn't allow for really, thinking through the strategy and what is going on. I mean, again, one of the things Israel could do is preemptively strike a lot of the missile facilities that the Iranians have in their launches. And there's talk of exactly that. So there's a lot of now speculation about what Israel is going to do. The New York Times came out with an article today based on American and Israeli sources that basically is suggesting that Israel will not attack nuclear sites in Iran. I actually think this is true. I think this report is right. I've heard it from multiple Israeli sources as well. Israel supposedly plans to focus strikes on Iranian military and intelligence bases, including missile and drone strikes, rather than the nuclear program. Why? Sources say, they're not committing why. Basically, pressure, U.S. pressure, a lack of confidence that they can take out the nuclear facilities, a fear of failure. Fear. Remember Netanyahu motivated to a large extent by fear? Look, I've said this before, but I'll say it again because this is the most important point about the whole crisis, everything going on in the Middle East. The most important point is this. An Islamist Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons, because an Islamist Iran might use them and will certainly blackmail everybody in the vicinity once they have them. Now, Netanyahu always seems to say that he understands this. In every speech he gives, the nuclear threat is the number one issue. And yet, they didn't attack the nuclear program in April when they had an opportunity. It looks like they're not doing it again. Kicking it down the road, when are you going to get a better opportunity than this? The Iranians will only make it more difficult for you, only going to make it harder to attack their nuclear facilities, and for all we know, might be on the way to building that bomb right now as we speak. Now, one of the things the U.S. is dangling in front of Israel in order to try to get them to promise not to attack the nuclear facilities, and by the way, not to attack the oil facilities. Not nuclear, not oil. The oil we know can't have oil prices going through the roof just before an election, blamed on Biden. Is that the United States has discussed the option of joining Israel's retaliation against Iran, including, and notice this, quote, very limited strikes against targets inside Iran. Strikes against Iranian naval assets at sea, as well as targeting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sites in Syria and Yemen. And I laugh, but you want to cry. The mightiest military force in human history, with clearly the strongest navy in human history, strongest air force in human history. No military today on earth matches it. Arrayed within striking distance of an enemy of the United States since 1979, who is funding and facilitating attacks on America from the Houthis, from elements within Iraq and Syria, and on an American ally from Lebanon, from everywhere, from 7 different fronts. And all America can think of is very limited strikes. I mean, this is part of why, I despise Trump. I despise Trump. I can't tell anybody, go vote for Kamala. You got to vote for Kamala. Because this is pathetic. And this will have, if they don't do something about Iran right now, this will have, you could talk all you want about everything else going on in Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, Gaza, all of that. And if Iran gets nukes, none of that is relevant. And he says, why is Israel so weak? Israel's not weak. It's America that's weak. But America is holding Israel by the balls. Israel needs ammunition. It needs resupplies of the bombs the F-15s and the F-35s are dropping. It doesn't produce those bombs. Those are American munitions. It needs spare parts for airplanes. That's American spare parts. It's, unfortunately, dependent on the United States. You heard Macron the other day declare that the West should have an arms embargo on Israel. That's the French. Now, on the one hand, it seems, all these rumors, Israel's not going to attack the nuclear facilities. It's not going to attack oil. It's not going to do this. It's not going to do that. America's trying to do this. But then there's also, at the same breath, you hear that the U.S. doesn't know what Israel's going to do. It hasn't briefed the United States on its military response. So here's what supposedly, it hasn't made a final decision, supposedly. U.S. officials do not believe that Israel has made a final decision yet on their response. But that the options have been finalized during cabinet meetings over the last few days. Options, but which one? And it's also true that the U.S. has telegraphed to the Israelis quite clearly that if they choose to target targets that the U.S. does not want them to target, that there will be dire consequences for Israel as a consequence. Israel is between a rock and a hard place, so this is not a simple decision. And if you add to that the fact, as I've said, that Netanyahu is an indecisive coward, explain to me, somebody explain to me, how Israel had not decided on the option to respond a month ago because everybody knew Iran was going to attack Israel at some point. Why didn't they have the plan to respond worked out? And why didn't they do that the day of the attack or the day after the attack? How about the day before the attack as a preemptive attack? Why sit on it, wait, let the Americans respond, have conversations, let pressure build, let constituencies respond, let the an American general fly into Israel and pound on the table and tell them what America demands? Why give all of that time and space to develop? Why not, on the day that the missiles were launched from Iran, not launch planes and hit whatever you have decided to hit in Iran the same night or the following night? It's mind-boggling. This is exactly the kind of indecisive cowardness that Netanyahu represents. Now you could say, well, they were in the middle of an invasion of Lebanon and so on. Always be excuses. There will always, always, always be excuses. Trump does not have a strong position on foreign policy. Trump is unbelievably weak on foreign policy. He is pro-Putin. Pro-Putin. It's not clear what his position is on Israel. He doesn't want a war. When he got out of the treaty with Iran, which was a good thing, he immediately says he wants a better treaty. He never bombed Iranian nuclear facilities. He didn't, as far as we know, he didn't allow Israel to do it. He killed Soleimani, big deal. Killed one guy. And he was awful on North Korea. I mean, just awful on North Korea. I mean, what foreign policy good did Trump did? I think one reason to vote against Trump was his foreign policy. I mean, just his behavior towards the brutal dictator of North Korea is reason enough to vote against Trump. That clown show, groveling, holding up a little communist flag, his best friend, his buddies, his communication, just that is grounds for impeachment, in my view, but grounds for disqualifying him from being president. So no, I don't think Trump has a clue about foreign policy. And the reality is that every single one of his foreign policy advisors who are any good, marginally good, a little good, from Bolton to Mathis to Kelly to the many other generals surrounding him to his other Secretary of Defenses, have all said they will now vote for Trump. Almost all of them have said they will not vote for Trump because he is untrustworthy and has a terrible foreign policy. I mean, these are people who were there, as Bolton says, in the room with him. And they say the guy's untrustworthy when it comes to foreign policy. So no. Foreign policy is the one area where the only reason you could vote for Trump, the only good reason to vote for Trump, he'll deregulate. At the regulatory agency level, not at the fundamental level. Maybe he'll shake up the bureaucracy. But that's it. On everything else, he's terrible. And the other only reason to vote for Trump is he's not Kamala Harris. But there's no issue. And on the economy, if he's serious about his proposals, he's worse than Kamala Harris. Her proposals, his are worse for your pocketbook. So, all right, remind you again, because we're way behind on Super Chats. Super Chats is the way we fund this program, or a major way in which we fund this program. So please consider jumping in with some support. You can do a sticker. You can do a question. It's also a way, again, for you to shape the show. The show will be very short today if we don't get more questions. All right, just some more stuff about Middle East. Let's see. We talked about the Iranian sites, so we covered that. Yeah, we covered the fact that the Biden administration is losing its trust in Israel. Netanyahu, who I despise, and who should not be prime minister now or ever again, again, he does good PR. He should have hired, they had the PR department, right? Netanyahu just released a message to the residents of Lebanon, calling on them to rise up against Hezbollah and take back their country. This is a quote from him. "I say to you, citizens of Lebanon, free your country from Hezbollah so that this war can end. Free yourself from Hezbollah so that your country can prosper again, so that the future generations of Lebanese children and Israeli children will no longer know war and bloodshed, but will finally live together in peace." I think that's good. I think the fact that he's sending that message is a good thing. This is the direct appeal that needs to be made to the Lebanese people, to Lebanese politicians in positions of power. They have to take this opportunity, with Hezbollah dramatically weakened. It's now obvious that Israel did kill Nasrallah's 2 replacements, so they're going to have to go deeper into their dugout to find somebody to replace Nasrallah, and maybe nobody wants the job because it's a challenge. But yes, what Israel should be doing is appealing to Lebanese people and Lebanese political parties to rise up against Hezbollah. Senior officials in the U.S., Biden administration again, has given up on a ceasefire in Lebanon, but wants to make sure that Israel's ground operation in southern Lebanon is very limited. And they're very, very concerned that Israel's ground operation will expand. And again, what scares them is so-called regional war. Nobody knows exactly what a regional war looks like, what it is, what it engages in. Again, America can prevent a regional war in the area by destroying Iran's capability to launch such a war. It has the resources right there in the Middle East to do so. It would rather, compromise and appease its way towards no regional war than actually take the initiative and prevent such a war from actually happening. John, thank you for the sticker. John just did a $20 sticker. Thank you. I need a lot more of those to keep this show on the road. All right. Finally, Hamas, they keep reporting these numbers about casualties in the Gaza Strip. I think it's 42,000 people have died in the Gaza Strip since the war began. And they keep mentioning that. There is leaked information that Hamas itself has acknowledged internally, at least, that 80% of the deaths in Gaza are either Hamas fighters or affiliated with Hamas, Islamic Jihad, or political representatives of Hamas, or their families. That is, 80% of the deaths in Gaza are directly related to Hamas. Directly related to Hamas. Now, you'll see almost no mention of this. People still talk about genocide and the continued horror that Israel is doing in Gaza. But of the 42,000 dead, 80%, almost all of them, are affiliated with Hamas in one way or the other. Now, including their families. Finally, just to give you a sense of how crazy the crazy left is, we talked about crazy right, now crazy left. Judith Butler, a philosopher of the left, very much so, of the left, I think an ethicist. This is a quote, direct quote from her. Hamas and Hezbollah are social movements that are progressive, that are on the left, that are part of a global left. A global left. They said it. They said it. And this, of course, only fuels the crazy right. This only fuels the crazy right, right? Because and the crazy right might be pro-Israel because they view Israel's enemies as of the left, at least for a while. All right. Finally, a quick story, and then we'll go to your to the super chats. And again, looking for more super chats. We have reached our first hour, and we are a little behind. The Economist ran this story. I thought it was kind of a fun story, right? Why China is awash in unwanted milk. Milk. Why does China have so much milk? Prices have plummeted, right? They've gone down from, just after COVID, they were at something like 4.5 yuan per kilogram to close to 3 per kilogram. Well, to understand this, one has to go back to 2018. In 2018, the Chinese central planners, in their wisdom, decided that milk was indispensable to the health of the Chinese people and therefore to a strong nation. And they decided they had to boost China's milk production and milk consumption. And the Chinese, by doing so, would become fitter, healthier by consuming dairy products, of course, dairy products rich in protein and calcium. And as a result of this, as this central planner's dedication to the health of the Chinese people, China established subsidies for herds of cows for milking. And they urged state propagandists to, quote, nurture the habit of consuming dairy products. And the campaign has achieved some of the goals. China's milk production has risen by a third. Last year, the country's cow yielded 42 million tons of milk. That surpassed a government target of 42 million tons which surpassed the target, whatever that target was. But, Chinese are not big milk drinkers. The average Chinese person still consumes only about 40 kilograms of dairy products a year. They're not big into cheese. They're not big into milk. They're not big into Greek yogurt. It's called Greek yogurt, not Chinese yogurt, for a reason. The Chinese consume about a third of global average. The French consume 3 times the average, and the Chinese consume a third. And they consume 40% less than what the Chinese health authorities have decided they need to produce. So production's gone up, but consumption hasn't really gone up that much. What happens? Increased supply. Demand is not there, though. The supply increased completely artificially because of what? Because the government decided it needed to, because the government subsidized it. So prices have dropped about 30% since August of 2021. The cost now, the price of a kilogram of raw milk is below the cost of production for a lot of farms. The consequence of this, of course, is already that farms are losing money in spite of being subsidized, which means that the government will either have to allow them to go bankrupt, which will shrink the supply of milk and markets will adjust, or they will increase the subsidy, which is what central planners typically do. Now, one of the questions the article raises is, why are the Chinese not consuming more milk? What's wrong with them? Why don't they drink more milk? And as a start, Chinese are genetically predisposed to being to lactose intolerance. You know, many people around the world are disposed to lactose intolerance. Tolerance for lactose is something that developed evolutionarily relatively late in humans, because milk, cows for domestication of cows for milking is relatively late development. In the Mongolian steppes, they herded cattle, but dairy products are not a big part of traditional, outside of the Mongolian steppes where they herd cattle. It's just not part of the Chinese diet, never has been. They never understood when the Europeans drank a lot of milk in the 19th century, they were exposed to Europeans for the first time. They didn't understand it. They think it's disgusting. Anyway, the Chinese government is dedicated to changing these habits. I'm not sure what they're going to do about the genetics. Maybe they can genetically modify the Chinese people to not be lactose intolerant in order to consume more milk so that their farms won't go bankrupt. I'm not sure what comes first. But anyway, that is another example. If you need one more example in the gazillion list of examples that exist out there of the stupidity of central planning, here's another one. Chinese people generally don't buy much exotic fruit stuff. They don't. They also, right now they're in economic trouble. They're not spending a lot of money. There's not a lot of. They don't have a lot of babies, so there's no demand for infant formula much that's made from cow's milk. Most stuff that's overproduced, if you will, was produced more than the domestic consumption will bear, is exported. It's hard to export milk products. Primarily Chinese milk products. Who wants Chinese cheese? Not exactly a reputation. It's not exactly a reputation. Also, there was a scandal years ago of a Chinese company milk powder, I think. Milk powder had melamine, and 6 babies died, and hundreds of thousands of babies fell ill. People just don't trust Chinese milk products. That's not what that's. There's no way to export them. Central planning gone amok. But next time, next time we'll get it right. I promise. This time we get it. This time the people are smarter. This time we asked ChatGPT. So it's definitely much better, because ChatGPT, I mean, God, ChatGPT knows how to centrally plan better than you guys. All right, we'll cut it there. I've got a few other news stories, but we'll stop there. Thank you to the super chatters that are slowly coming through. I appreciate it. So remind everybody during this break that this is a listener-supported show. It is supported through contributions of listeners like you. Some of you do it live with a super chat or a sticker. There are 140 people right now on YouTube watching the show. Many of you have never done a super chat or a sticker, or some of you haven't done it in a while. Value for value. Be a great time to support the show. Many of you are listening to this after the fact, or maybe even on a podcast app, so not even anywhere close to YouTube. Some of you can do an applaud on YouTube, but many of you, I will just encourage you to consider going to Patreon or to PayPal and becoming a monthly supporter of the show. Then you don't have to think about it, but you're basically engaged in a trade with me. Value for value. You get the value of listening to the show. I get the money, which is what I want. What the show, to support the show, what we need, and we have a trade. Trades are good, value for value. So please, Patreon, Yaron Brook Show on Patreon, or on yaronbrookshow.com/membership. New website coming soon. You can still use the old website. New website will still be yaronbrookshow.com. So yeah, go over there. Support monthly. You can do $2 a month, all the way up to $500, or I guess you can do $1,000 a month technically, all the way up to $1,000 a month. Would love to have you as supporters of the show. And those who do support the show, there are perks associated with every level of contribution. But it's mainly this trade that we're engaged in that I hope you will consider. Yeah, let me also remind you, as part of funding for the show, which we have to do, we have 3 sponsors. We have Alex Epstein, who is the author of Us Our Future and the author of Energy Talking Points, the author of a Substack, alexepstein.substack.com, really where you get the best ideas, the best thinking, the best commentary on issues related to environmentalism, climate change, fossil fuels, and more broadly energy than anywhere else. Alex has been doing a bunch of interviews lately. I've seen a lot of his videos on Twitter and stuff. You should all be supporters of Alex, and you should definitely be subscribers to his Substack, alexepstein.substack.com. Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand Institute is looking for students who are interested in studying objectivism in greater depth, who would like to attend a conference. There's one in Austin, Texas, in last weekend in February. That conference will have Ben Baer and Greg Salmieri and many others. You'll have an opportunity to really dig deep into topics related to objectivism, related to the philosophy, ask lots of questions, hang out, schmooze, engage with objectivist intellectuals, and get a sense, a flavor of what it's like to be part of the Ayn Rand University and maybe what a career as a future intellectual might look like. If you're young, if you're ambitious, even if you're not that young, but you want to dig deeper into the philosophy, and you want to, and I think the way to do it is to take classes. That's what I did, and you can take courses. All of Leonard's courses are available online, and you should. But it's great to have other students in the class, and it's great to have a professor in front of you whom you can ask questions and get feedback. And you can do that in Austin, Texas at the end of February. You can do it in Berlin in March. You can do it in Brisbane, don't forget Brisbane, in December. And you can apply for a scholarship if you're a student. You can apply for a scholarship, certainly if within reason, all expenses paid. So check it out on aynrand.org/start here. Please go to aynrand.org/start here. You can also register for the conference in Brisbane there. But if you want a scholarship, that's where you can find the information about the scholarship. Please use that website. It really is, it's helpful to the show if you use that website. And finally, John Bobbin is a sponsor of the show. He runs a health and fitness YouTube channel, Phi Life, Philife. You can find the link below on YouTube, Phi Life, and where they discuss what's going on in the space of fitness and health and gaining muscle and body composition and diet and all these kind of things. John kind of synthesizes, integrates the information available coming out of the science, coming out of practitioners, people who are experts in gaining muscle, experts in nutrition, experts in exercise science, and he integrates it all and provides you with kind of customized advice, individualized advice. You can follow his channel, subscribe to his channel on Phi Life on YouTube. John, I will also be doing a members only show with John, where we'll be talking about these kind of issues, longevity and health and fitness, on one of the members only shows coming up. So this month's members only show will be with John discussing all these kind of issues. So line up your questions if you have any, and of course join as a member here on YouTube. Actually, I think I've still got 5 memberships to gift. Let me gift some memberships right now. Membership gifting. I just gifted 5 memberships. You too you can gift memberships to people. You can buy the memberships for other people. and Durowski just became a member, as did Paul and Matthew and I can't pronounce it, and Urban Porcupine and so on. So great. It's great to have you as members. Hopefully you'll stick around for that show. And hopefully once you're a member, you'll stay a member by supporting the show with a small contribution. All right, let's go to your questions. We're going to start with David because we start with the person who puts the most money behind his Super Chat question. And that is David. Just to remind you, bring in Super Chat questions. We want more of them. We were behind in the first hour. We've made that up. But now we're going for the second hour. We're still $200 short for the second hour goal. We can do it. We've done it the last few shows, so we can do it today as well. So please consider supporting the show. Stickers, $1.99, $2.99, $50, $100. Stickers will be great. All right, David. And am under a lot of pressure in my business to lower prices, but am reluctant to engage in price wars. Should I continue my strategy and let my competitors lose money? Or should I fight to lose market share? Should I fight for lost market share, even though the sales are almost at cost? I mean, that's a really tough question, but I think at the end of the day, you will, if you can, it's a question of how long you think your competitors can keep up losing money. But it seems to me that not engaging in a price war, sticking with the prices, but telling your customers, look, the advantage of staying with me is I'm going to be around. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm making a little bit of money when I sell to you, but that makes it possible for me to continue doing business with you. I assume that's a value. You can go to the competitors, but they're either going to have to jack up prices at some point higher than what I'm selling in order to make up for all the losses, or they're going to go out of business. So who would you rather have a relationship with? Let's build a long-term relationship by making sure that I don't go out of business and yet you get a decent deal. Maybe I'll give you a small discount right now, but I can't sell you at cost, and I can't go below cost. So find ways in which to, I think this is a period in which you want to find ways to strengthen your relationship with your customers. Find maybe non-tangible ways in which to get them connected to you, to get them committed to you. Share with them the dilemma that you're facing about prices. I think open communication, again, enhances that bond between supply and customer. So I think the strategy is right, but you've got to you got to compensate for the fact that your prices are a little higher by increased engagement with the customers. I don't know if that's helpful, David. I mean, you know your customers best and you know the market better than I do, but that would be at least my first pass at an approach to this. All right. We have a bunch of $20 questions, so we're gonna go through those. But David's come in with another above $20 question. So let's see. If I call my main competitor and try to convince him to not do price war, does this show weakness? Well, I mean, I don't think it does. But here's the thing I think that is important. That is that if you call him and you threaten that if he does something, you will have to respond and you will actually get into a price war, then you're going to have to do it. So part of the challenge with calling your competitors and starting that process is putting yourself into some kind of box where because you have now engaged in this issue with your competitor, now you're forced to follow up on whatever threat was made or whatever agreement was made. It's also, and again, I don't know in your industry and in Costa Rica, whether antitrust is an issue. In America, you'd be very, very careful before you called up a competitor, particularly if what you're talking about is kind of price setting, is price fixing. That is a criminal offense in the U.S. That's a huge antitrust no-no. And even you have to be very careful, even if now I have no idea what's going on in Costa Rica. But I'd be cautious that you're not giving away too much by calling him. I don't think it's a sign of weakness if you have a strategy going in, a clear strategy going in on how to deal with all the different scenarios of the different ways he might respond, the competitor might respond. So I don't think it's straightforward one way or the other. It really, really, really does depend on how much your competitor you think can lose money, whether he's reasonable and will take the call and have a constructive conversation, whether he use the opportunity to squeeze you, and are you, once you make the call, you have to be willing to live up to the price war. You have to actually be willing to engage in it. David says, good advice, Yaron. You should be an economist. No, economists don't make enough money. I should be a consultant. I should be a corporate consultant. I should be, at $5,000 an hour or something. I should be charging business people a consulting fee for my brilliant advice. All right, but this is a lot more fun. So let's get back to the fun. All right, Remo. Has MBS is the ruler, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and has MBS truly cracked down on radical Islamists, Wahhabism? If so, has your foreign policy view therefore changed in recent years with regard to Saudi Arabia? So the first answer is I don't know. It's very hard to tell. We don't have that much visibility. Clearly, he's cracked down. Some of the most radical Wahhabis are in jail. Some of the worst preachers are in jail. There's no question the curriculum, the school curriculum in Saudi Arabia is being changed. The stuff that I used to cite, other experts used to cite, of this horrific anti-Semitism that used to be expressed in school books in the Saudi curriculum are mostly gone. Saudi Arabia at some point discovered that Al-Qaeda, ISIS, were out for them too. And if there's one thing the Saudi royal family wants to do, it's to survive. It's to continue to rule Saudi Arabia and continue to benefit from the gazillions of dollars that they bring in from oil production. So, to the extent that they have identified Al-Qaeda and ISIS and other kind of, groups that would engage in violence, I think MBS has cracked down. To what extent has he actually cracked down on the mullahs, on the religious leaders, on the Wahhabis? I don't know. There's such an integral part of Saudi life. It's hard for me to believe they've been completely cracked down, completely silenced, or just silenced for a while, pretending to be moderate. Hard to tell. I'm not that intimately engaged in Saudi Arabia. But look, I know people who've met MBS, and they all claim that he really wants to westernize Saudi Arabia. Now, again, this is the same MBS that ordered the dismemberment, the murder, and cutting up of the Washington Post columnist a few years ago in the Saudi embassy in Turkey, and he thought he could just get away with it. And it turns out he can't just get away with it. So the elements of barbarism that involve violence and involve he will get his way one way and the other are still there. MBS is not a lover of liberal democracy or federalism or individual rights or free speech. People are still put in jail for criticizing MBS or for advocating for or coming out as atheists or being gay. You do not want any of that. They have turned away from being militantly anti-US and anti-Israel. So my position vis-a-vis foreign policy, and I think they've stopped, or at least doing the utmost to stop, directly supporting terrorism. Directly supporting. Indirectly, they still support. So, from a foreign policy perspective, yeah, there is a change. I don't think Saudi Arabia needs to be dealt with the same way I think Iran needs to be dealt with, or the same way I thought Saudi Arabia needed to be dealt with after 9/11. It changed in the 23 years since 9/11, where other countries have not. It has moved away from Islamism, not as far as I would like it. They haven't become civilized. They haven't become westernized, but they're better, and you have to recognize that. They're less of a threat to America. They're less of a threat to America's interests. And indeed, one of the great weaknesses of the Biden administration is that Saudi Arabia is, I think, moving much more aggressively into the American sphere. And then with the pullout of Afghanistan and just Biden's just pathetic, tough on Saudi Arabia, then not so tough on Saudi Arabia, and indecision, and what looked like would be tough on fracking in America, presented the Saudis with the opportunity, or they basically looked around and said, America's weak, who else? And they've increased their ties to the Chinese. I still don't think they're fundamentally in the Chinese sphere of influence. I think they still want to be part of the American sphere of influence. So, yeah, I think foreign policy-wise, I don't think they're a threat. I think, if anything, they can be used as an ally in certain circumstances. And, if Israel has the opportunity to sign a peace treaty with them, I think they should. Again, I think all these peace treaties should always be viewed by Israel with some suspicion, and they should always have an eye out, and they should always be fearful, and they should always be ready for these countries to flip on them and to go against them. But at least they're not a threat, at least not in the short run. Andrew, there are certainly ominous parallels, but we shouldn't get carried away. We are a long way from Nazi agents invading people's homes and dragging them out, though how close of an analogy is the potential of mass deportation? Well, I mean, it's a pretty big analogy, right? I mean, how are they going to do this mass deportation? How are they going to find all the illegal aliens? Are they going to incentivize people to tell on their neighbors? Many of these so-called illegal immigrants have been in the United States for 30 years, 40 years. They have children who were born in the U.S. or children who came to the U.S. How are you going to filter out who is and who isn't? Are you going to put them in camps and then figure out who stays and who's legit and who's not? Just round up all the Hispanic-looking people and figure it out? You're going to cops stopping people because they look like they might be immigrants? I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's deportation is like unbelievably scary as something America would do. Unbelievably scary. And a massive a violation of rights on a scale just I don't think we've ever seen, really. I don't think, again, it's Nazi-like in the sense of there are no concentration camps, they're not gassing them, and there's no ideology really here. That's the big difference between Trump and the Nazis, if you will, is there's no ideology behind Trump. There's no belief system. There's no goal. There's no something he's striving to achieve. This just gets his voters riled up. This is just one of those things. I mean, he really does, I think, hate immigrants. I think he really does, resent Hispanics. But I don't think he has like a driving ideology like the Nazis did. It's why he's not what Leonard called an M2. I don't think he's an integrator. I think he's a disintegrator. He's part of the disintegration, the fragmenting, the epistemological disintegration of the culture, which will ultimately give us M2 dictatorship. But he's not it, because he can't integrate if his life depended on it. He is a complete disintegrated mind. That's why he can't think. He's not a thinker. He's not capable of thinking in any meaningful sense. He's capable of putting his finger out into the wind. He's capable, very good at sensing people's emotional state, what people want, what people desire. It's not the same as thinking. So I think that's a big difference. No ideology, no thinking, just emotion and disintegration. But that disintegration could cause a lot of damage, And his followers are complete D's, right? You think about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, it's a complete disintegrated mind. Completely, any conspiracy theory comes out of nowhere. There's no theory overarching. I mean, there's some kind of notion of Christian nationalism. But she's not smart enough to be a Christian nationalist and to know what that implies. She just latches on to the latest weird, crazy, nutty thing. That's all she's capable of. And she's, by the way, one among many like this. Many. And quite a few in Congress. Religious ideologies are M. And the more committed you are to that religious ideology, the more you move towards an M2, which is everything is integrated around that ideology. So, yeah, religion would definitely be a misintegration. Integration, but around a false concept of God, Bible, whatever the authority happens to be. Jennifer, if a person actually believes religion, that can leave them open to any craziness, I think. Yes, that's exactly right. That's why the evangelicals are so susceptible to conspiracy theories and to MAGA and to the whole phenomena is a big part of within the evangelical movement. That's why they're also open to the adoration of a person. In this case, Trump. They're open to that adoration, that emotionalism, because the very essence of religion is emotionalism, particularly evangelical religion. Right? So, yes, once you believe in religion, once you believe in invisible powers manipulating the universe and all described in ancient books, well, what new conspiracy theory can I sell you? I can sell you lots of them, including Biden administration's manipulating the weather to drown Florida because they don't like DeSantis. They don't like Republicans. Adam, historically reliable sources in Poland report that Putin gave a dozen or so S-400 air defense systems to Iran, some already in Syria or around IRG bases, and surround Israel. Why is this not being reported in U.S. media? I don't know, but we know that, I've known, that Russia has S-400 systems in Syria to protect their crucial, and they've had it for a while now, but they've never turned them on. That is, they've never used them to actually challenge an Israeli pilot. Never mind shoot at it. They've never turned on the radar. And I think the main reason for that is, I mean, they have a deal with the Israelis. The Israelis get to do what they want in Syria. But one of the reasons might be is that they don't want the world to see how ineffective the S-400s are. I mean, Israel has obviously found a way to function in an environment with S-300s, the previous generation of air defense systems that the Russians made, without any problem, right? I mean, they dominate the Syrian airspace. Syria has S-300s. When they did the one bombing of the S-300 radars in Iran after the April attack, the Iranians didn't even detect it. They didn't even know what struck them. F-35s not detected by the S-300. Although if they carry a lot of munitions, the more munitions you load onto the F-35, the more detectable it becomes, right? The F-35 is stealth, but the missiles it carries are not necessarily stealth. So it makes it more difficult to maintain your stealth position. But Israel's managed to do that. And the reality is that Israel functions in the airspace of Syria without any problems, given the S-300's inability to target them and to knock them out of the sky, which is amazing. If you think about the amount of flying that Israel's done above Syria and the number of planes it's lost, exactly 0, that's stunning, given Russian technology. I think the Russians are afraid to turn on the 400 because they are afraid that the world will see that it's not that much better when faced with American/Israeli technology. That is, American technology enhanced by the Israelis. And that the Israelis might have ways to get around it, and, by the way, might have ways to knock the S-400 system out, that is, destroy it. And that would be, again, a huge blow to the Russians, to Putin, if their crown jewel of the air defense system, one they sell and export and have a lot of their prestige for manufacturing arms, if that gets knocked out by an Israeli pilot fairly easily, they would be pretty upset. So they have them there just in case they ever need them and Israel becomes too aggressive, or maybe somebody becomes too aggressive vis-a-vis the Russians. Maybe they have some kind of chance, but they never turn them on because I think they're afraid of showing their weakness. I mean, that's the best hypothesis I have. I can't prove it, and I haven't heard any alternatives. David had shoulder surgery 6 years ago, and after 2 painful months of rehab, recovered almost 100% full range of motion. My only regret was not having surgery sooner. Thanks, David. I appreciate that. This is my challenge. The challenge is I'm traveling after a month, so I will have to do the rehab exercises on the road while I'm traveling. I'm going to try to see the physical therapist as quickly as possible after surgery, get a menu of exercises. And yeah, I mean, I expect the recovery is going to take time. If the pain is, limited to 2 months and everything works great afterwards, then yeah, I'm good. And, every day that my arm really hurts is a challenge. It hurts, so it's pain. But also it limits my ability to fully work out. I have limited range of motion. I can't do a proper push-up. I have to do kind of a modified push-up. I can't exercise all the muscles I'd like to exercise, which I don't like. And I can't, lifting my arm like that hurts, and it's just not fun. David also says, regarding military analyst, YouTuber Ryan McBeth is fantastic, very knowledgeable. Thanks. I'll check him out. I'm curious how his analysis of a lot of the situation compares to mine. I'm just curious. But I'll check him out. By the way, I know I promised this many times, but this time I'll actually live up to the promise. I'm going to use some of this time where I'm going to be out a little bit because of the surgery to catch up on stuff that I owe you guys. So I owe you guys some reviews of some still maybe a movie, some TV shows, and certainly a bunch of music. So I do expect, I want to catch up on all of those in the month of October. So my expectation is to completely catch up on all the music reviews, TV shows, and music by the end of the month, so we can start fresh if you guys still want those kind of reviews. And also short stories. I know I owe one short story that I'm supposed to read and do a review of as well. That is also on the program for when I'm kind of laid up and can't do much. I can listen to some of the music you asked me to listen to and do much of else. All right. Bradley says, Roark didn't pursue status because of his philosophy. But isn't status seeking related to sex rather than philosophy? It seems much more like a hormonal and a psychological phenomena, especially for men. Roark channeled it. No, I don't think so. I think the hormonal, if you will, the masculine aspect of this, the hormonal psychological need is not for status. Status means relative to others. It's success in the world, success in the physical world out there. Being a successful architect, being a successful fill in the blank. Being able to make a living, being able to provide for oneself, to sustain oneself, sustain one's life. Now, that is true of a woman as well as a man, but in a man, it is, I think, more emphasized in what it means to be masculine, right? So that's the psychological, hormonal, if you will, phenomena. How exactly it manifests, I don't know, because hormones are not ideas, hormones are not motivation, hormones just give you the capacity. So testosterone makes you have more energy, you have more physicality, you have more muscle, you have more, you have more drive. It doesn't tell you what to drive for. That is choices. And you don't have a psychology. There is no psychology at birth. You might be born with certain inclinations, certain attributes, but you're not born with values. You're not born with ideas. You're not born with what to pursue. That comes from choices. So status is something that we are raised to pursue by a second-handed environment. Because status is all about your relative performance relative to other people. And that is a bogus standard. But we live in a world which is dominated by second-handedness. It's dominated by altruism. It's dominated by looking at your neighbor and what he's done and what he's succeeded at. And in modern times, it's also dominated by envy. And of course, if you go back to tribal society was, again, it was about the tribe. It was not about the individual. And as such, it was focused about how the tribe is doing, how other people in the tribe are doing, and your relative status relative to them, because a tribe is an environment where power plays a big portion of it. It's not necessarily a trading environment. Force and power and status play a big role. But those are learned behaviors, learned by the tribe, learned by Christianity, learned by collectivism, learned by second-handed philosophies. It's not, absolutely not. You're born with it. You're born with the capacity, the energy, the hormonal fuel to go out there and shape the world. How you do, but whether you go out and shape the world or not, whether you choose to use that fuel in that way, or you used to use that fuel to slaughter and maim people, or whether you use that fuel to commit slow suicide, that is completely a choice. That is completely up to you. Right? So it's not baked in. Dworsky from Twitter. And you know, sex again is, just to finish that answer, sex, yeah, vis-a-vis vis-a-vis your courting a female, you want to be successful. But, sex, again, is not a zero-sum world, and it's, you are what you are. You are going to, you don't set out to be successful in order to get sex. Because many of us make choices about being successful and not being successful way before we know that sex exists. But the reality is that success is attractive. Right? And therefore gets you sex, if you will, or gets you a good spouse. And that, by the way, is true for men and women. Drowski from Twitter. Hearing that Tampa gas stations have obeyed anti-price gouging laws and kept their prices low despite demand, there's now no gas for those who urgently need enough just to get outside the hurricane path. Of course. I mean, that's exactly as I've described what price gouging does and how evil it is to have laws against it. It actually, is damaging to human life. Anti-gouging laws. All right, we're about, we're coming up towards the end of the second hour. We're about $100 short. So more questions. 5 $20 questions would do it. That would be great. 2 $50 questions would go along, would do it as well. But even $5, $10 stickers would be fantastic. So please consider doing stickers and doing questions for large amounts. That would be great. Lucinda just stepped in with a $20 question, so we'll take that. I dislike the justification of religion as help to deal with death. The Christian conception of heaven disgusts me ever since I was around nine and played a big role into my becoming an atheist. What are your thoughts, Yaron? Yes, I think, I don't know that, I didn't grow up Christian, so in Judaism there really isn't much discussion of heaven and hell, and I became an atheist so young that I don't think I ever considered the discussion of heaven or hell. But the idea that you should believe in an afterlife because of fear of death is escapism. It's rejection of reality. It's rejection of your mind. It's, putting pretend above reality. And I agree with you completely. That is horrible. It's a horrible idea. It's a horrible sentiment, but it's very, very, very appealing to many, many people. I remember, I've talked about this before, but my first discussion with my son about death when he was 4, maybe 3, 4. And, the moment he realized that he would die, or he could die, and he would die one day, and the anxiety that caused him, and he cried uncontrollably. It was terrifying. And it would have been so easy at that point to step in and say, oh, but when you die, good things happen. You go to heaven. Now, he's a smart kid. He would have, even at the age of 4, he would have turned to me and said, really? How do you know that? I mean, he would have, I think. But it would have been so easy to say that. And it's a escape of weak people. It's an escape of weakness. Instead of facing reality and facing what that reality means, which is that you have to live and make the most of this life, instead of that, you escape into this delusion that, yeah, this life might suck, but there's another life where things will get better. And I think that's one of the things that are most distasteful about religion, and one of the ways in which it most manifests itself in this anti-reality, anti-thought, anti-fact, and anti-reason kind of mentality. All right. I like numbers. Can you justify want only private efforts in North Carolina, while FEMA has been actively hindering private efforts, reaching people. They're even threatening arrests. I don't understand the question. FEMA is now I don't know, like the stories coming out of North Carolina, how many of them do you trust? How many of them do you believe? And how many of them are politically motivated? Just saying, I'm suspicious. But FEMA's a nasty organization that is bureaucratic, ineffective, inefficient. It's really, really badly run. Would I want only private initiative? Yes, I want only private initiative. And that includes charities and the Red Cross and whatever, other nonprofits that might specialize in disaster relief. It would include, I think, in a rational society, in a free market, insurance companies and things like Walmart and places like that would come in with supplies. And it would include potentially local efforts, the fire departments, the local police, maybe there'd be local funds put together voluntarily to deal with these disasters once it was known that they were happening. But insurance companies have an interest in helping deal with these crises because it will reduce the claims that they have to pay out afterwards. So there are a lot of private incentives to deal with these things that do not require government intervention. And government intervention, in this case, is detrimental and of course, unnecessary. Ryan, a little surgery money for you. Hope it goes well. Everyone chip in a little for recovery. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Robert, but you shouldn't chip in money for my surgery. You should chip in money for the show. The show's a value. Chip in money for the value that you get for the show, not for my health or anything like that. Not for my surgery money, but for show money, the show money. Robert says, a trivial, quirky question. Why in politics do we refer to men by last name, women, Hillary, Kamala, by first name, as Rand did in her fiction? I don't know. Good question. But we don't, right? So how do I refer to Nikki Haley? Haley? How do I refer to Clinton? Clinton. I mean, we don't really call her Hillary. I mean, Kamala, maybe? I don't know. I don't think that's a uniform trend. I think we mostly called Hillary Clinton Clinton. But I don't know. David, Christopher Hitchens was a renowned atheist. However, he conveniently overlooked Edward Said's religiosity and Islamism as a driving force behind Palestinians' hatreds of Jews. Christopher Hitchens was very mixed. And, was understood, I think, the evil of religion and wrote about it and spoke about it. He was, for the most part, very, very good about Islam. So I'm not sure about this reference around Edward Said. He might have, because he and Edward Said were both on the left, and it could very well be that Christopher Hitchens bought into some of the post-colonialist garbage that Said was selling, that he let him get away with that. But for the most part, he was very, very good on criticizing Islam. Very good on criticizing Islam and Christianity. But Islam, I think, in particular, post 9/11. All right, let me just thank Mateus for the sticker. Thank you, Mateus. I know there have been a few other stickers, or maybe not. Martin. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Colleen. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Urban Porcupine. And thank you, John Parker. Thank you, John Bales. And who else do we have? This is the problem. I'll wait till the end. Jeremy and Mary Aline and Mark Goodwin, Goodkin, and William and Mary Aline again. And John Bales. Okay, great. I think I'm caught up. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the stickers. You can still do stickers. We still got a few Super Chat questions, not a lot, a few. We're basically $49 short. $49 short. Let's at least get to the 2-hour goal. We just got $2, so we're $47 short. Let's at least get to the 2-hour goal. We've got 6 minutes to make it to the 2-hour goal. And then I'll then we'll call it a show. Oyvid says, do you have information on your visit to Oslo? Do I have information? No, but I should have it soon. I've got the dates. It's a Sunday, and it's basically most of the day event. It'll be start at around noon, and it'll go into afternoon, and then there's a dinner where everybody's invited. So it's like a whole day kind of event, in Oslo and I'll tell you when it's on. It's on December 1st, Sunday, December 1st. So more information coming, but December 1st, basically all day in Oslo. Plan on that. Hunter, where is the line between innocent and evil among altruists? How influential must one be pushing an evil? How influential must be pushing an evil idea to be considered evil themselves? I think that it's sometimes difficult to separate innocence and evil, but the older you are and the more educated you are, the more evil you probably are. That is, the more opportunities you've had to discover the truth and therefore evade it, the more evil you are. So, I'm not going to call anybody 15 evil or 18 or even 22 or 24 in this Western world. But once you get into your late 20s, particularly if you're pursuing some kind of intellectual career, if you read a lot, if you're engaged in the world, and you still hold these evil ideas, then I'm starting, okay, you're evading. Then it's an evasion. And how evil it is, the more you push for the idea, the more you're responsible for knowing everything to do with this idea, and therefore the more you're responsible for your own evasions and for what you don't know. So the more you push, again, the more likely it is that you're evil. And the older you are, and again, the more engaged, the more activist, the more intellectual you are, the more you are responsible for knowing what this idea is all about, and therefore the more morally responsible you are for the evil of the idea that the idea represents. Hopefully that gives you a sense. I highly recommend Leonard Peikoff's, the essay on sanction that he wrote. God, I'm blanking on the name of the essay. But Leonard Peikoff has a really good essay which discusses this exact issue. Somebody on the chat will remind me of the essay I'm talking about. Lucinda says, what disgusted me about heaven was that it was existence without any action needed to sustain it. I remember making a classmate cry by arguing that heaven lacked meaning and betrayed humanity for immoral heroin addiction. I mean, you're an extraordinary person, Lucinda, to be able to do that at 9 years old. That takes a level of understanding of the nature of human beings and the nature. I mean, basically what you were arguing was the Garden of Eden was hell. And I agree with you completely. But to have that understanding at age 9 is pretty phenomenal. It is really pretty phenomenal. But you're absolutely right. It's what I call the Garden of Eden phenomena. People expecting manna from heaven, everything available to them, no effort, no values, just stuff. And when Eve finally pursues a value, knowledge from the tree of knowledge, an apple that represents values, she's kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? And it all ends, right? That's the epitome of evil. The Garden of Eden story is probably one of the most evil stories in all of, I'd say, literature, all of storytelling. Really, really evil story. Really sets up a really, really evil standard. And, heaven is just Garden of Eden projected into the afterlife. John, thank you. Reuters reports Hamas faces dissent in Gaza as heavy toll weakens support for war. Hopefully this is true. I hope so. The problem is that the toll has not been heavy enough. The toll needs to be heavier. Too much aid is going into Gaza. There's too much food in Gaza, in spite of the constant claim that there is famine. There's no famine. And the Gazans are, as uncomfortable as they are, they're still too comfortable. And you'll know when they're uncomfortable enough, when they really turn on Hamas, when they really are willing to hand over the hostages to the Israelis, tell them where they are, and turn on Hamas and help Israel destroy Hamas. That's when you know they've reached the breaking point, and that's when you know they've taken a heavy toll. So far, that hasn't happened. And it's taken a year, and they still haven't done that. I hope you're right that these reports are accurate, and that this is the beginning of the end for Hamas, and the beginning of the maturity of the Palestinians, the realization that Israel is not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. Robert, welcome home. Good to see you at YBS Central. Yes, it's going to be at YBS Central. With a reliable upstream internet connection, yes, and your best technology hardware at your disposal, yes. And we'll only be improving this setup, lighting and background and all that. I forgot to turn on my lights. How come nobody told me the ambient lighting is not on? I'm hoping to improve all of that and make it even better in the year to come. My goal and your super chats and your monthly support is going to go to upping the game of the Yaron Brook Show, trying to expand in terms of subscribers, but also just technically making this better. I'm also looking at various ways that when I do spend time overseas, we can have a robust network and not have so much downtime. Robert continues, thank you, and Elon Journo for yesterday's discussion. Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate the support. Orban Popican, thank you for the membership. My pleasure. And that was $5, which is the cost of membership. So he paid for it. Thank you, Orban. Evitki, do you think that the West is too vague a term, and when we want to talk about Enlightenment culture, we need a new, different term? I feel like the West is too easily packaged with Christianity. But that is what we're going to have to fight no matter what. That is, whatever term we come up with to represent modern civilization, we're going to have to unpack it Christianity. Now, maybe the West, it's more difficult because of geography. I don't know. But whatever term we come up with, the fight to unpack the concept from Christianity, get Christianity out of the package deal, is going to be essential and difficult. Morandi, thank you. Always looks impressive, those 5,000 pesos. He writes, suppose IDF decided to do the same thing that Hamas did to Jews, including rape, torture, and humiliation, not out of hatred or taking revenge, but as a legitimate military objective aimed at terrorizing or pacifying the Palestinians, or to break their will and get confessions in order to gather intel on hostage taken by Hamas. Would that be moral? It's a good question. And the answer is no. And the reason it wouldn't be moral is what it would do to the soldiers who would have to do it. I mean, the horror of raping another human being. And to the extent that you have soldiers who would be eager to do that, you don't really want them as soldiers. So I'd say your primary concern there is with the dignity, the humanity of your troops. Now, there are certainly circumstances where torture can achieve this, and where killing of civilians like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki or something like that is necessary. But to actually engage in face-to-face butchery and to actually engage in something like rape, is just horrific. Is not something you would want to do to your own people, and that would be why it would be immoral, primarily. All right. Let's see. Wesley, everyone say Joker 2 is terrible, would never watch, and I don't know why people loved the first one. It was so dreary, depressing, and nihilistic. I agree completely. It was awful. But it was very reflective of, I think, a mood that the country has. And that nihilism is in our culture. I don't know how Joker 2 is doing. And if everyone is saying it's terrible, that's good, because a lot of people consider Joker 1 as a masterpiece. Yeah, I mean, it was a celebration of nihilism, and that is just horrific. Matt, watch Ryan McBeth's recent video on the hurricane. All right. Hunter, Scott Alexander comes to mind, pushes and spreads altruism hard, and is influential and highly educated and evil in some areas original. Is he evil? He's certainly an invader. He's certainly immoral. I don't know if I would call him evil, in the way he, but, well, maybe I do, because, I mean, he gave away his kidney, right? And justify it, supposedly rationally. I have a lot of respect for Scott Alexander because he's good at certain things, at analyzing certain phenomena, at statistical analysis, at other things. But God, his effective altruism is horrific. Horrific. So yeah, I would judge him morally, absolutely. Not a good person, morally. And decide. Now, is he evil in the sense of destroying life? How evil? I mean, those are, you'd have to really think through how evil you want to categorize it, in what context, what would be the purpose. Pickaxing on Europa. Finished Atlas Shrugged today. Wow, congratulations. I get the Gulch reference in behind you now. Tragic ending scene with Eddie Willis trying to restart the comet. Incredible. Remind me of Thomas Sowell's quote, "Knowledge is rare," truly evocative. Yeah, I mean, the ending with Willis trying to restart the comet is to show that even the good people, even the best among us, are dependent in important ways on the geniuses, on those who are extraordinary. And so even an Eddie Willis, who's friends with John Galt and is a good guy and friends with Dagny and Loyal and Francisco. Now, Andy Bernstein used to say, he's not worried about Eddie Willis. He's got amazing friends. As soon as the novel ends, they are putting together a search party, and they go and find Eddie Willis and take him to the Gulch. And he deserves that. He should be taken. But the reason Rand puts him in the predicament that he's in is to show you that even the good guys, we can't start the comet. It takes a Dagny. It takes the extraordinary. We are all in that sense our life depends on the extraordinary. Kipper Overstreet, the first super chat ever on a live stream. Thank you. Really, really, really appreciate it. And it's $50. Very generous. Really appreciate it. It's fabulous. A great way to kind of end the show. We're out of questions. Again, I do these shows as long as you guys want me to go. Most of the time. Not always. As long as you guys you want these shows to go 3 hours or more, ask lots of questions. That's the way to do it. So the more super chats, the longer the show goes. Now, yeah. All right. No show tomorrow. I'm in surgery. I don't know what happens after that. I don't know what my condition will be on Thursday. My guess is no show on Thursday. I'll just be taking Percocet, and I might say crazy stuff on the show, right? Friday, maybe a short show. Maybe yeah. So maybe a short show on Friday. But yes, tomorrow, 100% no. Thursday, I guess 80, 90% no. Friday, maybe 50-50. But by the weekend, I expect to be able to do shows, right? We could live stream from the surgery. I'm told I'm quite entertaining as I wake up from the anesthesia. No, I mean, I look awful, and I mumble, and I know many of my enemies would enjoy watching it on a live stream, but no, not a good look, not a good idea. Yeah, I mean, my experience in the past is that I try to get off of the really powerful pain medication quickly. I don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the fact that I'm dependent on it, and I try to go on Tylenol or Advil as quickly as possible and get off of that. So I expect that I'll be getting off the pain medication quickly, and I hope the pain will slowly subside pretty quickly. We'll see. I mean, the really bad pain that you can't deal with the Tylenol. I certainly don't want to get addicted to any of the, and I don't think I never have. I've had surgeries. I know how this goes. I've had 3 back surgeries in my life, an appendix, and soldier surgery for a completely different thing, but on the same shoulder. Doctor doesn't want me to have physical therapy the first week, but I'm gonna bug him tomorrow when I see him before the surgery or after the surgery to give me the physical therapist name and try to get it started as quickly as possible. I agree. All right, guys. I will see you with. I'll be in a brace so as not to get excited and move my hand in a way that the doctor does not like. So I will be wearing the brace, I think, next time I see you on the show, so that I don't get tempted to use my hand in a way that's not successful. Robert says, sending successful, easy surgery and quick recovery vibes from YBS fans of Michigan. Thank you, YBS fans of Michigan. By the way, hopefully we're organizing a trip to my annual trip to Michigan for the spring. Lucinda says, excited for the show with Greg. That's right, Greg is next week. So, all your philosophy questions that you have, all the questions on epistemology that you've asked me, and I've been, I don't know, get them ready for Greg. Greg will be on in a week, so week from Thursday. So yeah, get all those questions ready, and I'm also going to be doing a show on inflation. I've got a few themed shows, one show on parenting, and some other shows. So got some theme shows lined up, ready to go for probably next week. All right, see you soon. Bye, everybody.